Hey, welcome to another episode of the Coffee Break Podcast, where our mission is to share business ideas, practices, and strategies while we enjoy our cup of coffee. Today, we've got two guests. They're from Biz Technology Solutions, Melissa and Reda, and we're going to be talking about security, cybersecurity. We're going to be talking about leveraging the cloud, and we're going to be talking about automation, all things that I'm pretty excited about, but I even learned a lot from these folks. I've got 2 pages worth of notes, so it's definitely going to be impactful and relevant for you to pay attention to. If you have any aspect of business management, this is going to be something that you can learn from today. Very practical business ideas and strategies. One of the things that Melissa said today is that you need to focus on assigning a technology to a business priority. And I think that's something that we can all learn from. And you're going to have some good takeaways today. I did want to give a shout out. We got a recent comment from one of our listeners on the podcast, and they mentioned that they added the Coffee Break podcast to their list of regular podcasts for their drive back and forth to work. They have an hour commute back and forth each day, and they said it sure beats listening to the news. So we're 2 thumbs up. Better than the news. Make sure you subscribe and check out more of the episodes that we have at loc-doc.net/podcast. Grab a cup of coffee and get ready for this conversation.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh yeah.
Well, welcome, guys. It's always fun to have conversations, and this one is going to be fun today because we're going to be talking about some cybersecurity stuff. We're going to be talking about leveraging the cloud, which I'm always excited about, and some business automation stuff. It's going to be really cool. So thank you guys for kind of being here and joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
So quick introduction, and then we're going to jump into rapid fire. So we've got Melissa on the left. So Melissa, give us a quick introduction, who you are, what you do.
So Melissa Smith-White, Director of Sales and Marketing with Biz Technology Solutions, and I'm a matchmaker. I help people find solutions for technology needs and business outcomes.
You're a matchmaker. Interesting. I'm notating this. But you're in sales, so you connect people together. I get it. Okay.
I do. That's 100% what I love to do. And really, we partner with small to medium-sized businesses to support, manage, and streamline their IT functions so that they can focus on their business. That's what we do.
Very cool. And on the right, we have Reda.
Hello, Reda Chouffani, and been a Biz Tech for 20 years. We founded Biz Tech, myself and my brother, and been in the technology industry since I finished college at UNC Charlotte. So Go 49ers.
There you go.
And been doing technology ever since. So
very cool. So you're one of the founders of the company.
Yes.
Very cool, man. Well, congratulations. It seems like you guys have got some cool stuff happening there, and really appreciate you guys taking time to chat today. So we've got to jump into rapid fire because that's part of the fun here. Randomly selected questions just to get under your skin. Unknown point values. Are you ready?
Right.
Go for it.
Okay, so we're going to alternate back and forth since there's the 2 of you. So Melissa, number 1, what is your strangest talent?
My strangest talent, I can flip my eyelids.
You can flip your eye. Okay.
I'm glad I didn't get that question.
This is video, so demonstration.
Okay. If you really want to see, I don't want to freak people out, but I can do it. Hold on.
I'm not going to look.
Hold on.
I don't even know what's happening right now. Oh.
Wait, you see it?
This is okay. All right.
I see. That one might stay. Oh, well, usually I have makeup on. When I don't have my mascara on, it just stays up there. Learned how to do that a long, long time ago. Actually, my daughter does it now. She's 11.
I am so intrigued at the current moment. You're a matchmaker and you can flip your eyelids. This is just, learned
something new about her today.
Oh, all right.
All I got to say.
Oh, this was something new you learned too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she said that in the interview. So,
hey, the word was strangest.
We did ask.
What are
That's your skills?
All right. All right. Next one. What's the best knock-knock joke that you know?
I guess that's for me.
Yeah.
Gosh. The orange. Aren't you glad I didn't say banana? My kids think it's the dumbest joke ever. It's a dad joke. But
Okay, I just laughed.
You're the only one.
Orange knock knock joke. Got it. Okay, here we go. Next up, Melissa, if you could eliminate one food so that you would never have to eat it again, what would you pick to destroy?
That's hard because I'm a foodie. I think I would destroy green peppers.
Green peppers.
I like a red. I like a yellow. Green peppers just get under my skin.
Really? Well, I don't know that I would fight you much on that one, so that's kind of a good choice. All right, Reda, what is something that's been giving you energy lately?
Running.
Ooh.
Definitely has been helping. Started running again, and I can definitely tell the difference again.
Very cool. Where are you running?
Right now in the garage. There you
are, doing the treadmill.
It's gotten really cold, and cold weather does not motivate me to run outside.
It is tough. It especially depends on the time of day. We've been doing some runs on the rail trail here in South End Charlotte, which is fun. You have to dodge a lot of dogs, that type of stuff. But it is definitely fun. And I enjoy running in the evening versus the morning. One, it's a little warmer, but it's still
right.
I
do mornings, early morning, and I mean, again, when the weather is nice, I'm absolutely outside. But since the temperature changed, I've gotten lazy in the last couple of months, so I haven't ran outside. And then just this week, we decided, you know what, I'm going to buy a treadmill, and we brought it in and started running in the mornings as well.
Very cool. Very cool. I like it. It's something good that will give you energy. All right. Let's see here. Melissa, you have the final question because you're on number 5. What makes someone a hero?
What makes someone a hero? I think when they put others before themselves.
Ooh, that's deep. Who is someone in your life that you would consider a hero?
My husband.
Ooh.
He's a good guy. He's a much better guy than clearly he's a great guy.
Yeah.
He always puts his family first, no matter what. And my kids would tell you the same. So he's a good guy.
Very cool. Good shout out. All right. Well, cool. Well, thank you guys for jumping in today. So we're going to be talking a little bit about kind of, I guess, what I would classify it as the back end stuff of the business, right? So we talk a lot about business ideas, practices, and strategies. And what we're going to be kind of talking about is technology that drives the business ideas and strategies, right? Cybersecurity, security as a whole. I talk to a lot of business owners on a regular basis, and I can, even in the security industry, on the physical security side, I can tell you that the cybersecurity thing is something that we probably don't really have on our radar as much as we should. What are you seeing in terms of businesses across your customer base as it pertains to that? Is that something that they're worried about, focused on? Is it something that you're having to educate people on?
So, obviously, when it comes to cybersecurity, a number of factors are getting business owners and businesses in general to pay attention to. The first one is that they all seem to know somebody who either wired some money to some bank in Asia or somewhere, and it was a complete scam. Mm-hmm. And they say, unbelievable. I would have never thought in a million years that we will intentionally wire 6 figures in some cases, not realizing until it's too late that we wired it to some scammer. Number one. Number two, some of the nightmare and horror stories of folks getting their systems or locked out of their system because of ransomware. Mm-hmm. And given that reality that it is becoming more, frequent that they're hearing these stories, a lot of businesses are recognizing that, oh my gosh, we need to do something about it. And some of the things that really it comes down to, there's a lot of things you can do about it, or a lot of steps that you can take, not only from a technology perspective, but by all means, you do need some products and best practices within your environment and everything to help you protect your infrastructure, your digital assets. But there's also a whole nother layer which deals with the folks and the people. You mentioned physical security. What good is physical security if the last person in the building does not arm the alarm and leaves the door unlocked? So you do rely on people. Believe it or not, is the same principle in the IT world.
Sure.
There are some aspects where we do realize on the awareness of individuals for them to ensure that there are areas that they need to really pay attention to from a security perspective.
So I want to kind of jump in there because you mentioned ransomware, which is very interesting, and also on the scam side. I know in our business, so I'll touch on scams real quick. In our business, in the service world, we get a lot of email scams. We want to purchase 2,000 locks or whatever, and after you see them over and over again, you can kind of pick them up, but that's the kind of bait that people are looking for. Secondly, on ransomware that you mentioned, I feel like I've been in a state of mind where, well, that's not going to happen to me, right? I've heard of them, like the theories around it, but that's not going to happen to me. But I personally know 2 businesses that have been hit by it, and a significant cost that they were trying to go after, and they lost a lot of data. So that is a real thing that people, I think, probably have in the back of their mind, but maybe aren't actually doing anything to change. What can you do about it?
So you touched on those 2 fronts. So from a scam perspective, we see a new wave of attempts. It's no longer just, I want to buy 100 laptops and computers, let me know, and you pay with a credit card, or you take the credit card, you ship them the products, and you find that the credit card is fraudulent or stolen. Yep. And then you basically, the bank takes back that money, but then you're already out the equipment. A lot of the scams that are being sent out today are actually folks that are able to gain access to emails of individuals, whether it's because their password was leaked out on the internet. And a lot of time we have folks that use the same password across everything, right? Because we don't have enough passwords to keep up with, right? So it's the same password, their favorite dog and the year they were born, or their kid's name with the year they were born. And
you know my password. What?
Right, exactly. See, I was guilty of it for the longest time, but I do have a number of other characters in there. But ultimately, what hackers are doing, or I wouldn't even qualify them as true hackers, what these scammers are doing is they go in the dark web and look at all these databases that contain passwords, and they make attempts to log in with those passwords to those individual accounts.
Yeah.
Once they find an individual that they can get access to their email, they start learning about that individual, whether it's an accounting person or HR, and they will attempt to try to send to vendors or customers fake emails, or technically they're not fake emails, requesting payment to a different account. So that's an example of how sophisticated some of the scams are becoming, is these criminals are actually studying their victims and learning the behavior and what sort of transactions that could potentially lead them to money.
Yeah.
One thing I want to add on that too, so you kind of roll that back a minute, like what would we advise? Part of that is perception from the business owner, because a lot of times business owners view technology as kind of a necessary evil, not necessarily as an enhancement or a tool, or their IT firm as their trusted advisor, right? Typically, when you think about trusted advisors, you think of your CPA, you think of your lawyer, but anymore, that landscape is changing where that technology advisor also is a trusted advisor. And so I think kind of expanding your view and perspective on what does that really mean to me as a business owner? How am I creating my round table, right? Who's on my round table? So I think all of the things that Reda said, absolutely. But I think from kind of what can I do different as a business owner? Who am I inviting into my conversations?
Can you copy this key? That's a question we get asked about 3,422 times a year. And how can you actually be sure that the person who asked that question is supposed to get a copy of that key? Well, we think you should always know who can copy your keys to your business and your home, because it could be your neighbor, an old employee, a contractor, or even worse, your mother-in-law. At Loc-Doc Security, we believe in protected key systems, so you always know who has a copy of your key. To find out more, visit locdoc.net or stop by our Charlotte location. Loc-Doc Security, helping you protect your people and your property. From an account perspective, dealing with customers, I'm just trying to process this, because I know for me and for our organization, it's something that you don't think about until something happens. Mm-hmm. How are you communicating to people to be proactive rather than reactive? Because that's ultimately what it is. You're going to have, hey, this happened to me. Now what do we do to stop it from happening again? Because this was painful. How do you communicate it before the pain is there?
So I think what we've done, really our focus is worry-free IT, and that means different things to different people, right? And so, but when you say that resonates, because oftentimes people might have, an IT bent or familiarity, but I always say, as a business owner, you're supposed to know a mile wide and an inch deep. Mm-hmm. And so you need those opportunities for your team members or your trusted advisors to know an inch wide and a mile deep, right? And so how do we translate that into understanding? Is a lot of education, a lot of conversation, a lot of questions. And we ultimately have, several processes that we bring to the table where we ultimately have a business discussion around technology and using and aligning that technology into those business strategies, right? And how does that translate into outcomes? And so that's the goal. That's the goal for us. But we do a number of different things to educate. We have webinars, we have blogs, we have, all of the stuff, right? We have all of the stuff. But ultimately, we want to ask that one question. And what is that question? It depends on who you're talking to, but what are you trying to protect, right? What are you trying to protect? Are you trying to protect what data? Are you trying to protect private health information? Are you trying to protect financial information, investor information? Sure. So that kind of prompts those discussions, and then that leads to a bigger discussion. But ultimately, I think it's from a place of education, because a lot of people don't know what they don't know. And technology is so endless and vast, And so where do I start? That's another question. Where do I start?
Well, it can also be very intimidating as well. If you're, when you're going into it, it's who do I trust? So one, you got to find out who you can trust. Who you can trust first, and then from that point, become educated on what I need to do and why it is an important function of my business. I want to talk more as we dive through this, and I think even as we get into leveraging the cloud, maybe some more of those questions will come up. But I do want to talk about the ransomware, because I think that's something that we probably have all heard of. Maybe we're not sure how susceptible we are to it, but are there things that you can do that would protect you, some proactive measures that you need to be looking at so that doesn't become a problem?
Right. So one of the first ones is making sure that you are not opening a file that's coming from somebody that you either don't know or are not expecting. Because, having ransomware is as simple as clicking on a file that opens up and infects your computer immediately. Unfortunately, a lot of the tools out there, or some of the traditional antivirus applications, are not capable of detecting the ransomware, because it does change its signature or its identity, almost like a fingerprint. Mm-hmm. So you can't really trace it because it's constantly changing. You can't really pin down, okay, this is ransomware, I'm going to block it. But it all starts from awareness of not opening or clicking on anything that you don't know or are not expected. The second layer is, of course, having the appropriate tools to protect against ransomware. Okay. Some of the tools include what we call endpoint protection and prevention or response, what they call them EDR, so endpoint detection and response. And those are tools that are intelligent tools that can actually recognize a pattern in what an application is doing on your computer. Think of if I was sitting on your computer right now and started to delete a lot of files. Well, that's really abnormal, sure. Unless you're just cleaning up your desktop or something. But there are tools that recognize that that's really unusual behavior and stops it and says, wait a second, time out. What are you doing?
Gotcha.
So those are smart tools. Some other tools are simply blocking traffic to servers that are located in foreign countries that are known to be servers that produce what we call these encryption keys that ransomware needs in order to encrypt your files. So if you take out the encryption key or the secret that will lock your files and you don't let ransomware get access to it in whatever country potentially is providing that, you can also stop it on its tracks. So there's options to block that. So
I got a question on this because I've got a few friends that are like hyper aware on security, especially cybersecurity. You know, their password for their Wi-Fi is 752 characters long, and they've got all these extra layers of protections for passwords and all this stuff, and just overly cautious about everything. Is that? Do you have to be at that point to be concerned all the time? Because I probably falter to the other side of things where, downloading things and downloading apps on my phone, and I'm a little bit probably bit more liberal when I'm dealing with those types of things. What's the moderation? I mean, do I have to operate in a place of fear all the time based off of cybersecurity attacks?
Not necessarily. I think there's always a baseline or, some minimum things that you have to take in consideration and have in place. First one, always have complex passwords that you change frequently. It doesn't have to be 250 characters, but you need to be mindful of the fact that, anything 8 or 12 characters is good start with, of course, making it that it's not simple and something that somebody can pick up on. Yeah. The second one is change your password frequently. The second one is multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication, which is, I think at this point, most folks are aware that they will get a text with a code, and based on that code, they log it into the bank website or whatever site on top of their password, and it will let them access that information. Now, some folks can say in the cybersecurity world, they'll say, well, there's something called SIM spoofing, which is basically fancy word of saying somebody can literally steal your phone and basically impersonate your phone and get all those texts there. If a hacker is going to that level, you're obviously a major target for them. You definitely need to up your game from a security perspective. But most average users, they're not going to be necessarily a target for hackers outside of the normal attempts that they're going to make on their passwords and things like that. But everybody's going to be different, but there are some fundamental things like changing your passwords frequently, making it, a little bit complicated, two-factor authentication, and keeping your equipment, whether it's your phone, whether it's your laptop, your server, up to date, and making sure you have some baseline security tools on it. And those will be the minimum.
Gotcha. So constant updates, make sure you're always up to date, and making sure that you're having complex passwords that you're changing frequently. Two-factor authentication, I think, is probably one of those lifesavers, because it does help a lot where it alerts you. So somebody's trying to log into your account from somewhere, at least you're getting some type of a notification on it. Very cool.
Well, Chad, the concern there, even though we say that that's really critical, its adoption is not really out there fully. Really? A lot of businesses still hesitate because they see the inconvenience that it creates for them sometimes. Having to enter a code every few days to log into your email, it does create an inconvenience factor, and potentially it can obviously hurt from a productivity perspective because you're spending a couple of seconds to enter a code. But we feel strongly about it that we really should consider that is at a minimum. And again, it's one of those things that customer is king. However, we make every attempt to really educate them of the importance, and there may be cases where there's real serious resistance on it. So
that's interesting. I guess I'm shocked at the fact that the two-factor authentication is not more readily adopted or I guess integrated into businesses, because it seems like just a natural progression. It's like, I would rather that than the constant every 2 weeks you've got to redo your password, because I've been in those situations before as well, and that is a very frustrating process where you got to redo your password every 2 weeks, and it's like, and it can't be anywhere close to what it is before. Like, I have no idea.
It's gonna be tough.
Yeah. All right. So leveraging the cloud. How much does leveraging the cloud aid in improving cybersecurity versus aid in giving opportunity for more cybersecurity attacks?
Well, in two fronts. I would say the first front is the fact that when you adopt the cloud, and when I talk about the cloud, I mean, there's a couple of components there. Think of it as a small business. They have a lot of their equipment, their servers and everything sit in a closet or a server cage, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. And basically it's time for them to upgrade their environment. And they decide, you know what, instead of us hosting all our equipment in the back, we're going to go ahead and adopt some sort of cloud provider, some of the names like Microsoft, Amazon, and things like that. And you know what, we'll just pay them almost like a utility for having access to servers. Mm-hmm. Now, the security factor there, physical is first, because now you don't have the risk having a closet where your server is, where somebody can break into the building and they can steal equipment or damage it. So there's obviously the physical security. You know, you don't have to worry about it. These data centers are equipped with high security where, you know, there's guards, you have to have certain things to gain access to the physical equipment, even though it's not really, I mean, it is physical, but virtualized, what I would say. But the other part is a lot of these vendors actually have value add services that they offer. So instead of you investing, let's say $30,000 or $40,000 on a piece of equipment that will help protect you or protect your network against hackers coming in from the outside, mm-hmm. Microsoft or Amazon will say, hey, for $150 a month, we will give you access to this security technology as a service. Just pay us $150 and you don't have to invest $30,000 out of your pocket, and just keep paying us. And, you know, as long as you use us, you'll pay us. And that also gives, you know, folks in small businesses access to security tools that in the past they couldn't even get close to because they're expensive.
Sure.
And that's a huge value that we see in leveraging the cloud and considering, because you have access to more security tools and capabilities than you would have otherwise.
Very cool. So that it one helps you in areas where you probably wouldn't spend money on your own, and then two, right. It's kind of a higher level of security because it's taking it out of your physical property.
Correct.
What are you seeing? Maybe Melissa, I don't know if you have any input on this from a customer standpoint. Some pushback on moving to the cloud. What are the hesitation points of going? Oh, I don't know. That kind of scares me a little bit, or maybe it's too much work.
You know, I think part of it is just, again, understanding the benefits and considerations of both. In certain instances, it's also a comfort level. Mm-hmm. You know, oftentimes you're more comfortable with what you know. So the cloud being relatively new, I mean, I'm not going to say it's brand new, but, you know, relatively new in certain circles. There's a little bit of pushback. But ultimately, you know, what we're seeing from the client perspective is far more cloud readiness and virtualization than before, I would say. Wouldn't you agree, Reda?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting. So one of the things that our company offers is a cloud-based keycard systems and mm-hmm. cloud-based camera systems. And we've been offering that for years. And it's something that early on, we started selling this product in 2006, 2007, and it was met with heavy opposition because it didn't make a lot of sense. And I always talk about the fact that, you know, Apple, when they came out with iCloud many years ago, it just kind of changed a lot of people's perception, at least on the consumer front, of, okay, this is kind of becoming normalized. Have you seen that kind of transition happening as well on your end over the, I guess, past decade or so, where people are it's becoming more normalized to have software as a service and cloud-based functionality?
Yeah, and we're seeing it being pushed from two fronts. One, you know, vendors, as you mentioned, the experience that you have where, you know, you're recommending that as an offering, and it could have some sort of incentives as well, because, you know, instead of doing a heavy investment up front into all these things, equipment and software and everything, you're saying, well, we'll take over that burden and we'll manage and maintain the system behind the scene for a you know, a monthly fee. Mm-hmm. And that helped obviously create awareness out there. The other front is clients not wanting to continue to manage and maintain these internal applications, and they recognize that they don't want to be in the business of upgrading software every 6 months and have to hold their breath if it's going to break everything, mm-hmm. or have to pay for constant upgrades, whether it's equipment upgrade, whether it's software upgrade, or the two together. it's better to just go on a system that's always up to date, and then they don't have to think about it. And that convenience really makes a difference for many of them. I think we're past the point where everybody is, kind of scared of the cloud. Well, it's not in front of me. I can't touch it, so I don't trust it. I think we've gone beyond that, fortunately for us. So a lot of the things that we're seeing out there is people are more willing to look at the cloud first for a lot of their applications than it is to try to consider, hey, let's start in-house.
I saw a data point the other day on a document I was reading, and it was saying that I think 90% of businesses are, maybe I'm trying to read this number wrong. 90% of services were in the cloud, but in our world, like 10% of video services were in the cloud. And maybe those numbers were reversed, but a very, very small number of percentage of people are actually adopting the cloud in video service from our perspective. What are you, and I don't know if you have any statistics on this off the cuff, but what is the kind of percentage of clients that you're seeing that are completely cloud based for their business, where they don't have any physical servers on site?
Yeah, I don't have any recent statistics, but I would say that there's definitely a significant shift that we've seen in the last 5 years, that it's more so when it's time to upgrade. There is absolute consideration of shifting to the cloud that definitely is taking shape, where a lot of folks are moving that direction. We still recommend that you really have to analyze and evaluate your options, because ultimately, even though it is attractive and it does eliminate some of the costs related to support and maintenance of equipment, but there's certainly a utility bill that it's not that you buy it once and you don't have to worry about it for 5 years. It's you're constantly paying for it, right? Where everything is as a service, and whether you're using it or not, you're still paying for it. So
gotcha. So being very selective in it, but so you're still seeing there's kind of a mix where there's sometimes that it doesn't make sense to have cloud services.
Right. So there's a lot of use cases where you have to evaluate based on the volume of your data. You mentioned an example on video. I can absolutely see why that's the case. Some of the restrictions are bandwidth, for example, connectivity, where a video feed to upload all the security footage and everything into a service provider is going to cost you bandwidth, significant bandwidth, but also there's a cost associated with viewing that information and the stores that it takes. So where if you had it physically in one of the local servers, it's a different price point where you're not paying really for connectivity as much, but you are paying for the physical storage, the drives in the building, and the support around it. So you'll have to consider both options and do your comparative analysis or ROI to see, hey, total cost of ownership over 5 years is better in the cloud than it is on premise, as an example.
Very cool. All right. Last kind of point of conversation here is automation. So this is obviously something that a lot of people are either excited about or scared about. Robots are coming. But what are the things that you're seeing where it says, hey, automation is really impactful here and it can help your business be more efficient because you can implement this? And what are the ways that you're seeing that actively coming to life in businesses?
Right. So there's obviously a number of fronts when we talk about artificial intelligence and automation, but I would probably use one simple example is in the customer service space. Whether it is a patient looking to schedule an appointment with their provider and it's 9:00 at night and they choose to do that and they'll have to go online, one of the options is to talk to a bot. And as you know, a lot of the websites today you go to, there's a little chat window that pops up on the right-hand side. That is what we call a bot, which is basically a algorithm or software that interacts with you and understands what you're asking it and then decides what the next steps are. So if you're asking it, hey, I want to schedule a follow-up because I have a cold or I have a migraine, it will ask you questions around your symptoms and it can either decide you need to call 911 or, hey, we can schedule something first available is tomorrow at 9:30. Would that work for you? That's a great example of not having to staff your office, if you're a doctor's office or a small doctor's office, with folks that are 24/7 or a third shift, just to provide that value add customer service to your customers or your patients. There are a number of other examples out there that relate to automation. I mean, obviously, we can always pick on Amazon, how they use robotics to move products around in the warehouse. It's far more efficient. It has a lower accident rate, where obviously people are not tripping over or getting run over by forklifts. Not to say that they've had that. I don't know that they did, but automation can also be physical automation, where you have things like that.
Just a reminder, you're listening to the Coffee Break Podcast. Also, we wanted to let you know that our team puts together a weekly blog post. You can find it at locdoc.net/blog. It's guaranteed to raise your IQ by 12 points or your money back. So it's pretty much a win-win. All right, back to the conversation. So I've been in a couple of warehouses before where they've got robots and they're moving product from place to place, and it's the coolest thing, because it's like, when you think about it, well, the fact that comes over there and picks up a pallet and takes it to another predetermined location, that if a human was doing it, it would just be kind of mindless activity, and that robot's always going to the same place. It's actually a benefit. In a kind of small business world, what you just said from a customer scheduling side of things, that's a huge kind of value for us, a huge benefit for us. What are some other things that could be automated, some kind of repetitive processes that a business might say, hey, if we could have, like, this always happens this way. So if we could just have something to do that for us automatically, then it would obviously allow that person to be freed up to go do something else more complex.
Yeah, I would give an example, and you probably heard of Office 365, which is the email platform that Microsoft has. A lot of folks are on that platform, but Microsoft has this neat little service called Power Automate, and it's available to anybody that's subscribed on Microsoft's email subscription. And what Power Automate does, it allows you to automate some of your business processes using the engine. A great example would be for a small business who receive, let's say, invoices for products and things like that they deal with. Power Automate is capable of scanning those documents and extracting the data out of the documents and recognizing that the invoice total amount is in this box right now. Earlier, maybe it was in a box a little bit above or below. And it's able to sort and direct the documents to folks without having somebody physically inspecting the paper or the invoice and say, oh, this is for Jenny or this is for Michael, and let me email it to them or let me put it at their desk. So there are definitely utilities and services that provide some of those automations that are not overly complex, but they do make a difference for day-to-day folks that are just walking around dealing with a lot of paper-based processes.
Do you think when you start talking about automation, people start thinking, oh, that's expensive, oh, that's really complex, oh, that's like massive undertaking, and there are some simplified tasks that could be automated? Like, does that scare people off?
I think so. I think that's part of the issue is folks associate that with programming and expensive costs. Now, full disclosure, we do have a development team that obviously gets involved in complex automations, and we build products and everything. But we also recognize that for some of our smaller clients that don't necessarily need an overkill product, we educate them on what they have access to, because ultimately, a lot of these things that we're talking about, automations, can be done by a business user. And that's the beauty of it. You don't have to have a programmer or somebody with 10 years programming in Java or some of the other things to basically build some basic automations, whether it's an approval process where you want to make a purchase and you want the business owner to approve it. You can set up a business process that will send the approval request with the details. Once you press a button, the business owner, controller, or CFO looks at it, reviews it. And if, let's say, they haven't had the chance to review it, you can have an automated email go to them, remind them in 2 days and say, hey, I'm still waiting for this approval. And then once the approval is done, a message is triggered to send back to the person that submitted it. So this type of automation does make a difference, but it can all be created by a business user that is comfortable with computers, because ultimately we're not asking for people with 2 years in IT. We're talking about people that are comfortable with Excel and basic things that they use on a daily basis to get out of their comfort zone a little bit and start thinking differently, where don't solve it with people. First, look at what you can do with what you have access to and what you purchased, and then take advantage of it and try to get to know it better.
So I have a question when it relates to that, because there's so much technology out there and there's so many things that are going on. It's how do you start thinking through, like, it could just be overwhelming. At the end of the day, this process, I could just do it myself over and over again, and it can be obnoxious and it can take up a lot of time. But my alternative is spending a lot of time trying to do the research and try to figure out how I can simplify the process. Is like, how do you help with that? Because sometimes that can be overwhelming for somebody that can just say, I just would rather just keep doing it, but besides spending the time to do the research.
Right. So I would say there's two key things that any business should look at when they partner with an IT vendor. And those two things are going to be really the key to being able to get to the place where, they want to obviously, just like your hashtag says, always improving. Ultimately, you want to have the appropriate partners. The first key thing is partnering with an IT vendor that talks business. You don't want to be talking to somebody that just talks printers and speeds and feeds and talks a lot in acronyms, right? Obviously, we like to talk in acronyms in the IT world, and I'm guilty of it. and it does make me feel smart, but ultimately, I'm not that smart at the end of the day. But you want a partner that is able to have a business conversation with you. And I think that's one of the key ingredients to have in a company you're talking to. The second one is having somebody that actually has experience within your vertical. If you're a law office, you don't want to bring in somebody that has experience in manufacturing. If you're in healthcare, you don't want to bring in somebody that works in maybe manufacturing or service industry that's unrelated to your world, because there's so many different things that are specific to verticals and in specific industries that it's really relevant to ask them, what experience do you have with our business or businesses like ours? And based on that conversation, you'll get a sense if they're going to bring in some value add or not.
Melissa, how do you see that happening? So obviously, we're talking acronyms, we're talking all kinds of information, and then you're having to connect that with the business owner or the management team or whoever the integrator is at that point. How are you having those conversations to I guess do the discovery to make sure that it's going to be a good fit?
Well, I think ultimately, those conversations start with what's important to you, right? And depending on each business owner, there's different priorities. What we've found is traditionally you can associate a technology to business priorities, no matter what that might be. And so, going back to, it's so vast, it's so big. So my grandpa used to always say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Right. And so through that conversation, you start creating paths for improvement. Right. And so ultimately, post conversation, you want to provide an assessment. I think that's critical for your partner to have a baseline understanding of expected outcomes and functionality, but current state. Because we can be talking about this and budget. Budget always plays a part. If you're a small business owner, oftentimes budget really drives technology adoption and influence. Mm-hmm. And I think, to Reda's point as well, kind of closing the loop with that is training, mm-hmm. making sure that your team has a strong understanding of all of the technology you're already paying for, because it's not always what's new and shiny. Oftentimes you've got tools in your stack that can create dramatic impact in the functionality of their workflow and mm-hmm. process improvement. Mm-hmm. So I think kind of sticking to a process. We're very process driven. Technology is always very process driven. I am, like I said, a matchmaker in the sense of understanding what the need is for the business and then offering that conversation to our technology teams. We have various teams that specialize in various functionalities, but ultimately the goal is to pilot, co-pilot, or passenger that IT journey.
It's interesting what you just said there. Oftentimes the tools that you're looking for, maybe they're already there and you just don't know that they're there. A very minute example of that is I just discovered a couple of weeks back that on my Google Photos app, if I take a picture of anything that has words on it, it has Google Glass, I guess, integration. You can just click on it and it'll copy all the text there and you can paste it. It's like, this is the most amazing thing ever. And it was there the whole time. I just didn't know it was there. So I was not able to take advantage of it. So oftentimes, I think to your point, there's ways that you can leverage some of the technology that you already have. You just have to start having that curiosity to go find it, leveraging with a good partner that's going to be able to help you find that and then prioritize what's going to be important for your business.
Well said.
Very cool. Well, I tell you what, I've learned a lot today. I've got 2 pages worth of information here, so I thank you very much for your time and your education today. Really, if there's anything that somebody would want to connect with you further and say, hey, maybe some of the stuff you guys were talking about made sense. Maybe some of it was a little confusing, but can you clarify it? What's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Well, I think you can always go to our website, www.biztechnologysolutions.com. That's one way. And then you can always reach us via telephone at, I'll give my number, 704-230-2053. And then we have, you'll find us on all social media platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. We're not hard to find.
Very cool. Well, Melissa, Reda, thank you very much for joining me today. Valuable information. Very much appreciate it. Those of you who are watching or listening for the first time, we invite you to subscribe. We have a brand new episode every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., and you don't want to miss out on it, so make sure you're subscribed. You don't want to miss a single episode. If you'd like to see the video version of this, then you should check that out as well. We're available on Facebook and YouTube. Links to all of that, including the subscriptions to the podcast platforms, are all available. All you have to do is go to Loc-Doc.net/podcast. It's all there for you. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time right here on the Coffee Break Podcast.